It's not like Caitlin Clark fell off or anything, but she was just absent for so much of 2025 after the huge 2024.
We have been waiting for Caitlin Clark to make her return to the Kelsey Brothers New Heights podcast.
The collapse did not arrive as a rumor. It arrived as a number. A brutal, undeniable number that cut through months of hype and confident headlines. 65%. That is not a stumble. That is not a slow decline. That is a free fall. When Unrivaled opened its second season to barely over 100,000 viewers after pulling more than 300,000 the year before, the message was not subtle. Whatever curiosity once existed had faded, and whatever loyalty leaders believed they had built simply was not there. 4 months, Unrivaled had been treated like a symbol of leverage, a symbol of power, a symbol of choice. It was supposed to be the safety net behind every bold demand WNBA players made at the negotiating table. If owners refused to bend, players could walk. If contracts felt insulting, players could leave. That threat only works if the other place actually works. But as ratings collapsed, that threat lost its teeth. A backup plan that cannot attract an audience is not leverage. It is a liability. What made this moment so painful was the timing. Just weeks earlier, players were speaking with absolute confidence. They talked about standing firm. They talked about refusing to settle. They talked about not accepting anything less than what they believed they deserved. They talked like people who knew they could not lose. But as Unrivaled's numbers dropped, the tone began to change. Quietly at first, then more clearly. Now, players who once threatened to strike are suddenly discussing playing under the old agreement they called unacceptable. Not because their beliefs changed, but because their power did. Power in negotiations does not come from words. It comes from options. And every time Unrivaled posted another weak rating, one of those options faded. Every time a network looked at those numbers and questioned its investment, the illusion of an alternative future got thinner. When players walk into a room knowing their only other door leads to a league that is bleeding viewers, they are no longer negotiating from strength. They are negotiating from fear. The numbers behind these demands are not emotional. They are mechanical. The league has said that what players are asking for would bury it under hundreds of millions in losses. That is not ideology. That is accounting. No business, no matter how public or symbolic, agrees to a deal that guarantees its own collapse. Yet the union continued to speak as if passion alone could erase deficits. That works on social media. It does not work in boardrooms. The real miscalculation was believing that one superstar meant universal value. Caitlin Clark changed women's basketball. That part is real. She brought eyes that had never looked before. She created moments that felt bigger than the league itself. But instead of building around that rare gift, leadership treated it like proof that everyone suddenly deserved the same attention, the same value, the same leverage. They confused exception with rule. They mistook a once-in-a-generation phenomenon for a trend that applied to everyone. Unrivaled's collapse exposed that mistake. When Clark was not on the screen, the audience disappeared. Not slowly. Instantly. That does not mean other players are not talented. It means talent alone is not enough to create mass interest. Sports is not just about skill. It is about story, identity, rivalry, and emotional attachment. Those things cannot be manufactured in one season. They have to be earned over time. Unrivaled tried to skip that process and sell confidence instead of connection. The market rejected it. Now that rejection is echoing into WNBA negotiations. The union thought Unrivaled would scare owners. Instead, it reassured them. It showed them that the alternative market is small, unstable, and deeply dependent on hype that fades quickly. It showed them that players are not as irreplaceable as social media made them feel. That does not mean players have no value. It means value has limits. And those limits are being drawn by viewers, not by tweets. The most uncomfortable truth is that the WNBA still exists largely because of NBA support. It has survived decades of losses because someone else was willing to carry them. That kind of patience is not infinite. Every negotiation that feels hostile, every demand that feels disconnected from reality, every public attack on ownership tests that patience. And now, with alternative leagues failing to prove there is real demand elsewhere, owners are being reminded that they do not need to rush. Time hurts players more than it hurts them. That is why talk of returning to the old agreement has surfaced so quickly. Not because players suddenly think it is fair, but because reality has closed in around them. When rent is due, beliefs become flexible. When seasons are at risk, pride becomes negotiable. The same voices that once spoke about solidarity will soon be thinking about survival. And survival always comes before principle. This is not cruelty. It is economics. The market does not care about speeches. Cares about demand. And demand has spoken loudly through empty seats and weak ratings. Unrivaled was supposed to prove there was hidden hunger for more women's basketball. Instead, it proved that hunger is very specific, very narrow, and very tied to a few rare stars. Without those stars, the audience vanishes. The tragedy is that this moment came when the league finally had real momentum. Interest was growing. New fans were arriving. Caitlin Clark gave the WNBA a chance it may never get again. Instead of building carefully around that moment, leadership rushed to treat it like a revolution that applied to everyone equally. They tried to collect value that had not yet been created. And now, the bill has come due. What happens next will define the future. Either players accept something close to what already exists and live to fight another day, or they strike and discover how quickly public sympathy fades when games stop. Either Unrivaled reinvents itself in a way that actually builds loyal fans, or it fades quietly as another experiment that burned bright and died fast. Either the league rebuilds trust between players and ownership, or it enters a cycle of conflict that drains whatever momentum still remains. This moment is not about who deserves what. It is about what is possible. Desire does not create money. Audience does. Passion does not pay salaries. Viewership does. Until those truths are faced honestly, every negotiation will be built on fantasy instead of foundation. The harshest lesson in all of this is simple. You are worth what people are willing to show up for, not what you believe you deserve. And when people stop showing up, the entire structure shakes. The WNBA still has a future. But that future depends on realism, not slogans. On building around what actually works, not what sounds good. On understanding that one star does not automatically make everyone a star. The collapse of Unrivaled was not just about one league failing. It was a mirror. It showed the limits of hype. It showed the danger of believing headlines over habits. And it showed how quickly power disappears when options disappear with it. Now the players stand at a crossroads. Do they take what exists and protect what still lives? Or do they gamble everything on pride and risk losing even more? Do they learn from what just happened, or pretend it never mattered? Because the market has already answered one question. The only thing left is whether the people in charge are willing to listen. Do you think WNBA players should accept the old deal or hold out for more? Do you think Unrivaled's collapse changes everything, or was it always destined to fail? And do you think women's basketball can grow without another Caitlin Clark-level star leading the way? Drop your thoughts below, share this with anyone following the league closely, and if you want more deep, dramatic breakdowns like this, make sure you like, subscribe, and stay locked in, because this story is far from finished and the next move could change everything.